Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank. We are coming to you virtually from Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, and again today we're bringing up our co-host from the Bay Area. More on that in a second. Everybody, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, this right here, it's the podcast for you. This is where we like to say street smarts and book smarts collide. Hopefully nobody gets hurt in the collision, but they do collide and we turn you into entrepreneurs. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon, and my co-host again today is Linda Popke. I'll explain more in just a second. Our guest today, I'm very excited to have Sean Greenlee of Sean Greenlee Consulting. Sean is a lifelong diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner. Ingrained in his consulting practice, leadership, and community engagement style, Sean believes that DEI should be a foundation in who we are and how organizations are led. He is skilled in leveraging a broad understanding of internal and external issues to design, build, and execute complex, innovative, and impactful diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies that meet company business goals, foster highly productive work environments, and I think this is so important, positively impact organizational branding, because that's incredibly out in front of the world today. So welcome, Sean. We're glad to have you. We'll be talking to you in just a minute. Everybody, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts: iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. Linda, help me out here. What are we?
We are ubiquitous.
We are ubiquitous. That means we are all over the place. The Shrimp Tank comes to you from about a dozen cities, including the mothership in Atlanta. We're in Boston, Boca Raton, just opening up in Columbus and Knoxville, a lot of cool places. Now, before we bring on Sean, Linda, you're back-to-back weeks with me. Are you very excited about that?
I'm excited. Yeah.
So, I do have sad news. I guess I'm making the first announcement here. James Alberson, who has been our co-host with us for about a year, his duties with Sandler and with the Renton City Council and all of that just made it impossible for him to meet on a regular basis. So he had to step away. We are close. I've been working on bringing somebody new in, but we weren't ready in time. So you generously hopped up I-90. Here you are on the Shrimp Tank. So thank you.
Yes, my pleasure.
Listen, Linda, I know you're a football fan, right?
Yep.
49ers?
49ers, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I'm sorry for what happened to them. No, I'm actually not sorry. I really am not sorry for what happened to them. But, you probably follow football, and you may have seen that recently big news was made on really more of a social level as well, where former Miami Dolphins coach Brian Flores, who had been fired this year after 2 winning seasons in Miami, sued the NFL and a couple teams, including Miami, because he said the Rooney Rule, and I can certainly see this, the Rooney Rule that says you have to interview minority candidates is a sham, and that he was being interviewed solely to cover the Rooney Rule. The teams had already in mind who they were going to hire. Have you followed that at all?
I have. It's been on all the news. I've watched some of the interviews. First of all, I give him a lot of credit, because I think it takes a lot of spine, a lot of gumption to stand up there and call people on this kind of behavior. So, but I do think that this stuff is happening, not just in football, but in other places as well, because that we put in a rule and there's good intentions, and then people subvert the intent of the rule, unfortunately. So
well, the rule's about 20.
Yeah,
the rule's about 20 years old. So I think I do give them the benefit of the doubt that at some point it was supposed to work. It obviously isn't. And one of the things before we bring on Sean to get his opinion, the interesting thing about Brian Flores is he's a 40-year-old guy. He may be, he could potentially be ending any chance he has of working in the NFL again, because teams may avoid him, very much like what happened with your former 49er quarterback, Colin Kaepernick. And so, it's not like he's 65 and saying, I'm not going to coach again anyway. So I give him great credit for that. So Linda, I'm glad that we're bringing on my friend, Sean Greenlee. I met Sean through Jordan Babineau, former boy, today's an NFL day, I guess. Former Seahawks player, former guest. We met on the golf course, which is where I really like meeting people. And I was so engaged in talking to Sean about his life and what he does. I thought he would make a great guest. Sean, welcome to the show. First of all, thank you for being here. And I guess I'd love your comments on, as a DEI expert, thought leader, consultant, your thoughts on the whole Brian Flores situation and the implications around the Rooney Rule.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Dan and Linda, for having me here. And first off, I'd be remiss if I didn't start off by throwing out my football fandom. I am a conflicted, yes, I am up in Seattle. I grew up in Seattle, but I'm a conflicted fan. I grew up a 49er fan. So Linda, you will like that.
See.
So I think I'm just going to leave now and let you two run the rest of the podcast.
That's the end. We're done. Bye.
and this is what's ultimately important, just being authentic in who you are and where you stand for. I grew up here before the 49ers and the Seahawks were even rivals. And to be frank, my dad played for the 49ers. So I always had that excuse of nobody ever messed with me because of Mr. Greenlee, even when the 49ers started to become more of a hated rival.
I'm going to let you off the hook for that, because if dad play that's okay. I will let that fly.
So yeah, I'm glad you brought up that topic. It's very relevant, and kudos again to Brian Flores for taking that stand in that position, because I think it's really is reflective of a lot of these organizations. And yes, you started to almost give the NFL a pass by saying that the Rooney Rule was 20 years old. But we see that in a lot of commitments today, hiring commitments, where organizations say that they're going to have a diverse slate at the final round. And that's one of their commitments, but yet they don't follow through and hold their leadership accountable to actually, bringing in those candidates in full consideration. It also just goes to speak, ill of those organizations who flash whenever a major event occurs, such as when George Floyd was killed. They come up with all these commitments and promises, but they don't, at the end of the day, walk the walk. They talk the talk, it's sexy. They put Black Lives Matter over all the jerseys and don the NFL stadiums. But what really is the organization doing to change the culture from top to bottom and really truly embody what we're looking for? Representation is important, and we can get into this later, but the simple fact that Brian Flores is taking this stand is very important. And yes, he may not get an opportunity in the NFL. I'd like to think that that's not the case. And if that's the case, then it's probably the best decision for him. And he's at peace with that. And he'll find plenty of other opportunities where his talent and his expertise and his diversity is valued.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that, like I said, I give him a lot of credit for coming forward and taking that. And it's interesting, you said a lot of times we see things being put in place, but they don't always play out after George Floyd, et cetera. We're sitting here in February, which is Black History Month. So we're seeing a lot of attention being put on diversity. But what really is happening? Is this just kind of like, we'll put some music up, we'll put some movies up, we'll plaster posters. Is there any real change that you're seeing around diversity and equity in terms of making progress in the last couple of years?
I would say yes. And the simple fact that we're having these conversations more frequently is indicative of the fact that it is becoming more important. And a lot of organizations are embracing it. And it's very meaningful for the employees of organizations. I think where we need to really kind of take a step back is how consistent we are with this message. And are we just coming out in Black History Month as an organization and putting up all these programs just to appease? Yeah, it is important when you see companies say, hey, it's not just Black History Month, but it's, hashtag Black excellence. We live we live diversity and inclusion 365 days out of the year. And it's not just, it's not just gender related. It's not just people of color. It's all other different forms of diversity and inclusion that are valued and that are important to our work team and our engagement overall.
Can we just follow up that for a second, Dan? Because that brings up one of my other favorite teams, which is the Golden State Warriors, that have a hashtag that they use in February that says not just the 28, not just February. So we have to look beyond February and what happens afterwards. It's not just a month of, we're here, we're done, let's move on.
Yeah.
So, Sean, it's interesting because I had a conversation I'm going to share with you and want to get your perspective. Just yesterday, I'm on an executive council for a regional networking group I'm part of. And we're looking at membership because we need to add members. And one of the real genuine conversations we wanted to have was, hey, look, we really would like to be more diverse. We really do. We want to not look all the same, a bunch of middle-aged white guys. We really don't. We want more. But the challenge has come up is when you're filling kind of seats in the membership based on what you do. So whether they're attorneys, whether they're wealth managers, whether they're in seat financial, whatever, the problem seems to stem from that there haven't been a lot of minorities, people of color coming up through the ranks so that they meet, we've been in this business for 10 years and they're hard to find. So when you have a company, an organization that says, we're really committed to this, we mean it, but we have no idea where to start because we can't seem to find, because those advantages weren't, those opportunities were not available. I apologize for the long question, but I hope that kind of makes sense. And my ultimate question is, what can companies and organizations do about that?
Yeah, great point. And that's often the common refrain. It's like, well, we don't have anyone. We don't have a talent pool. The opportunities weren't available to certain populations to be able to gain advantage. And it's true. Yes, and it's important to look outside of those networks because, believe it or not, that talent exists. Whether it's currently within your organization or not, it exists out there. There are plenty of sources. Even if you start to source from HBCUs or other organizations of that line. The important thing is just to get out of your box. And it's hard to see if you're looking around and you're a bunch of white middle-aged leadership, and that's your network. It is hard to find people that you find commonality with. It's important to solicit input from those people who have the different perspectives. Go to people you're not necessarily comfortable. Organization, ask for where talent may be able to come from because, like I said, it's there. You just don't know necessarily where to look.
And I think you're absolutely right. And we right now, again, we're in Black History Month, but this is not just about race. It's about ethnicity. It's about sexual identity. So how can we be better? Because I don't want to necessarily ask people who I'm working with, what your sexual preference is. Certainly race is visible. Disabilities are not always visible, but how can we be better at being more diverse beyond just the things that show up right away?
Yeah. Learning about people, first off. Because it's true. In a normal workplace environment, we check a lot of our personality at the door. We come in and we act who we think that we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be professional. We're supposed to kind of fit into the mold. We're supposed to be in that in group. And a lot of people, whether or not they've even, identified themselves or full comfortable disclosing it outside of the workplace, they definitely don't do it in the workplace. So within the workplace, the more authentic you are and the more transparent you personally are, especially as a leader, the more comfortable that your employees or your peers feel that there is this safe space that they can open up. And then once they open up, be it in like group settings or one-on-one settings, it's important to just have those conversations and listen to understand instead of listen to tell, learn where the different perspectives are. And it's amazing how much you'll learn and appreciate from that.
Well, I'm never I'm ceaselessly amazed how fast the first part of our podcast always goes. We've hit that point, Sean, where we have to take our first break. We'll be right back with you. We're going to take that short break to hear from today's Spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Sean Greenlee, for our Hot or Not section of the show, I'm going to talk to him a little bit about Anchors Away and then some. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank.
I'd love to write a book, but I just don't have the time. Does that sound like you? Maybe you have a compelling story to share or valuable advice for clients and prospects. If you could only get that story into a published format. I don't think you don't have time to write a book. Think your writing isn't polished enough to get your message across. Think this all sounds too overwhelming? Think again. At Leverage to Market Associates, we help aspiring authors transform a great book idea into an attractive published work. If you've written most of your book, we can help edit your work and drive it through the production process. If you're not sure where to start, we'll coach you through the process to organize your thoughts and create a compelling book outline. And if you're just not comfortable writing a book yourself, we can ghostwrite this for you too. Contact us at leveragetomarket.com for a complimentary evaluation of your nonfiction book concept today and bring your book to life.
Thank you. So we're back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm Linda Popke, and our guest today is Sean Greenlee, and our next segment is Hot or Not. So Dan, what's hot or not? Let's ask him.
Well, we're gonna ask Sean. Sean, we're gonna pepper you with questions. Linda and I are gonna pepper you with questions about business, about life, about DEI, heck, maybe even about chocolate. Who knows? At the end, you're gonna answer if it's hot or not, and at the end, unfortunately, you win absolutely nothing. But let's hope you have some fun. I'm going to deviate just slightly from DEI just for a second. I mentioned Anchors Away. And I think I know the answer to this, but let's start it off. Hot or not, Sean, a military as a starting point for a business career?
Hot. Absolutely.
I thought you
hot.
might say that. Tell everybody why.
So a couple of reasons. One, I did ROTC in college to help bridge the economic divide, if you will, and help to pay for school. And had the opportunity to go in as a supply officer, which is the business and logistics component. And it just formed an amazing foundation for my life, not only just for the accountability that I learned early on, but also, over the 10 years I was stationed all over the world, lived in Italy for 4.5 years, a ship home ported out of Japan, Hawaii, just had a lot of incredible experiences and got to lead through the lens of DEI and all those times.
There you go. Military is a great place to start. Okay, so now I have to go back to the chocolate thing because I'm a chocolate lover, and I need to find out what's hot, dark chocolate or milk chocolate, and why.
Well, I could do the cop out and say that both are hot because I'm an equal opportunity consumer. But I would definitely say dark chocolate. Dark chocolate, that's my jam. Pairs well with red wine.
Yep. And so I got to believe, I know you were at Starbucks for several years, so some of that dark chocolate and the mocha is going to do the trick, right?
Absolutely. And especially the month of February, Verona, that pairs well with chocolate. That's the perfect pairing for dark chocolate.
See, this is the typical Seattle Shrimp Tank podcast. In Atlanta, they're not talking about coffee and Veronas.
They're talking about Coke.
I don't know what they're talking about, but we got it going on with coffee and chocolate right here. And I also like to think we've got it going on a little bit with trying to be better in DEI. So I'm going to slip back on the next hot or not. Hot or not, Sean, affirmative action programs.
Hot. Affirmative action is important because it's, along the lines of, there's equality and there's equity. Equity is intentionally looking to give people opportunity to showcase their skills and their abilities.
Okay. So on that same thing, we're hearing a lot about critical race theory, and people are saying it's terrible, it's horrible, it shouldn't be taught in schools. And to my understanding, it's not taught to young children in schools. So critical race theory, hot or not?
Hot. I don't know what all the hubbub is about. I mean, I guess I do, but I think this is just trying to apply it where it's not, because I mean, as you alluded to, I mean, critical race theory is not taught in elementary schools. It's at the graduate level in the true intention of it. So, you know, and even still addressing one's history, how can that not be hot, whether you're in elementary school or a graduate student?
So I know the people who are listening on this podcast can't see this. You have one of the great paintings you have behind you is of George Floyd. And Sean, in all honesty, I can kind of chart my real push into DEI after having witnessed that. And I think a lot of people, it came more to our mind. We got shook from it more than ever before. Hard to believe we are now, I think, closing in, not I think, March, I believe it was, closing in on 2 years since the murder of George Floyd. The court system has done their thing. The trial's come and gone. Where are we? Is George Floyd going to be something like we look back at Rodney King and say, oh yeah, that, even though I think Rodney King had an effect at that time? Where are we 2 years later after the George Floyd situation?
It's still very important. And, you know, when George Floyd was murdered in May of 2020, and that's Breonna Taylor over my other shoulder. It's very important. It's important for us to keep those names, if you will, and all the names like Trayvon Martin on top of forefront, because, you know, gone and lost, but not forever. And the legacy is just in the fact that it really spurns the conversation, spurns the dialogue. And yes, it's a shame that dialogue and initiative has to occur at the cost of lives. But at the same time, it's important for us to continue to move the needle forward. So,
Linda, I'm going to do a follow-up question, because that's a phrase I usually like to use too. Has it moved the needle? How much has it moved the needle? I guess, you know, for whatever reason, because it was so widely viewed. I think during the pandemic, when everybody was sitting at home, I hate to put it this way, Sean, but it felt like it moved the needle more than some of the others we've seen. Many of the others in the past decade. Has this been a bigger shift in our culture, do you think, based on recent history?
You know, I feel it has. And then moving the needle again, I mean, looking at that analogy, it's a great analogy. And I guess it's often like our weight, you know, sometimes it moves it up strong and then it drops back down, then it moves it back up and then it drops back down. But the simple fact that this occurred recently with all the social media and the additional communications that have the capability of keeping it out there and in everyone's face, that is why it's much more relevant today, even 2 years later, is because it's out there and it's not going to go away.
So as a follow-up to that, in spite of that, and certainly I think you're absolutely right, the fact that we have in our hands video that captures the moment that cannot be disputed has been incredibly important. But even after that, and after Ahmaud Arbery, and after some of these other things, and all these other things, we had somebody shot again in Minneapolis. So hot or not, the way police are handling this, are they on the right track?
That's tricky. I'd say in between, you know, hot or not. I mean, hot in that it still is relevant. I firmly believe that the police departments are, you know, it's like you can't hold certain actions accountable to the whole. There's a lot of great work that's being done by the police department who are trying to come on board and trying to be relevant with the communities. And you look at the leadership, like, you know, Chief Carmen Best, when Chief Adrian Diaz here in Seattle, are definitely, you know, looking to lead inclusive environments and do the training necessary for their new recruits. There's always going to be, you know, those cold spots within certain organizations and individuals who don't reflect the whole, and they need to be eradicated. You know, those individuals need to be right-shipped, if you will. And there's no excuse for it. And the police definitely needs to be held accountable, as all organizations need to be held accountable to those ongoing actions and missteps by individuals. And that's what's good about today. And like the the advent of body cameras and social media is that it's a lot more, you capture what happens and the proof is there.
So speaking of proof, you work with companies, I'm assuming of all different sizes and industries in doing this. What proof are you seeing out there that companies are really, genuinely trying to make that effort, not only to hire more diversity, I guess I want to expand this because Linda brought it up, not only with race and color, but one of the areas that really hit me was diversity and able-bodiedness, right? In disabilities and in the LGBTQ community. So from a whole standpoint, diversity as a whole, what proof do you have that you're seeing that companies are working in that direction?
Proof is in the results at the end of the day. But I would say some level of proof, if you will, are the amount of job postings that are out there for DEI leaders and specialists within the organizations. It's moving beyond a collateral duty or a side assignment for HR employees to lead DEI initiatives to now having at least one, albeit maybe just in many organizations, just one person to be able to lead the strategy and the programming. Because once you start having that individual accountable, then there's a lot more progress made on the actions that are looking to be done. Proof as far as diversity of boards and diversity of upper leadership to be determined. It's not necessarily, in some organizations it's happening, but there's still a lot that are struggling to achieve those goals.
So to that end, we talked about, you pull people for who you know, and therefore we lose a lot of talent because they're not people that are known. Hot or not, mentorship programs where we go in and mentor, bring people in. Are those working or not?
Oh, so hot. Yes, and however, you have to have that diversity to be able to provide those mentors that look like your employee population, because it's like when you have a junior manager coming in and they don't have a African-American senior manager to look up to and say, this is possible, it's really hard for them to truly feel that they have that same opportunity. But mentorship programs can look different in different organizations, and you just need to be creative as to how you implement those.
So I'm going to get at least this in before our next commercial break. I know that you are a golfer because we played golf, and Linda, he's a very good golfer. He can really hit the ball well. It's probably from his Stanford roots, I guess. I don't know. Some other guy played at Stanford too. I can't seem to remember his name right now, but it'll come to me.
It's something with an animal like a T. Yeah.
Charlie Woods' dad played there, so that. But recently, in fact, just last week, a guy by the name of Mark Lai, who was a kind of a main podcaster for the PGA Tour Radio, recently was terminated because of comments he made regarding, of all things, the WNBA. It came up because he was being talked about the LPGA, which I actually think the best golf swings in golf come from women golfers like Lydia Ko. They have beautiful games, but somehow he transitioned to WNBA and said something to the effect that put a gun to his head before he'd want to watch a WNBA game. He got terminated. Now he said, well, I apologized, and haters and all of that. Talk about accountability. And I know there's this desire to try to be loud and all of that in a world of radio and all of that. But talk about the responsibility of the media to, if you want to be, if you want to say things that move the needle, it's one thing, but to say, to do what he did, talk about that accountability.
One, it was just ignorant, and it's the wrong thing to say, and it's the wrong position to have. But in leadership roles, you have to acknowledge the fact that you hold different level of influence. So as the media, you need to be able to speak not specifically your truth, but you need to be able to speak better truth out there. And for him to go out and say those comments was just not appropriate. And I applaud the actions that were taken on removing him from his position.
Well, we have now made it through the next round. We got a commercial break coming up. Sean, thanks for that great answer. We're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. When we come back with our guest, Sean Greenlee, for our famous Plead the Fifth section, it's the hard-hitting part of the show, Sean. We're going to find out what Sean likes and doesn't like. He's going to find out what that means. So will you. Come back with more from the Shrimp Tank.
Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our corporate sponsors: Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, Kitsap Sun Newspaper, BC Fitness Studio, and Upstart Group. Please visit our website at www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now, back to the show.
Hey, well, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. And again, we're here. We interview the best and the brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm co-host Linda Popke, and our guest today is Sean Greenlee. And Sean, our next segment is Plead the Fifth. So get ready for this.
And Sean, I don't know what position did your dad play on the 49ers?
He played tight end.
Tight end. He may not have had to do many fair catches on punts or anything like that, but you get one fair catch, one plead the fifth. So you better choose wisely to our hard-hitting questions. I mentioned in the tease out what you like and what you don't like. So it's a little bit more of a serious question. Plead the fifth, Sean, on the current state of DEI in the United States. What do you like most about where it is, and what do you like least about where it is?
So my dad was also an attorney, so I'm used to being interrogated. So I'm not going to plead the fifth on this one.
Did he interrogate you when you were a child?
I plead the fifth.
Okay.
So what do I like most about DEI current state, and what do I not like? What I like most is that it's conversation, it's top of mind. And when you say DEI, there are a lot of people who actually acknowledge or understand what that acronym stands for. It's important to have those conversations because, as we know, it's like everyone's at different places in this journey, but we can't advance unless we talk about it. What I don't like about it is just the amount of lip service that still continues to be out there. People who are more keen on saying what they feel their external stakeholders, if you will, want to hear versus actually what is right for their organizations and their employees.
Okay, so while we're talking about DEI, who's doing a good job at this and who's not in terms of companies?
Yeah. That's tricky. I think a lot of companies, a lot of the smaller companies are doing it. A lot of companies, the larger companies, and I'll give props to Starbucks, are still making opportunities, still making solid efforts at doing the right thing and training their employees. I think what's important to understand is that even those companies like Accenture is another one of those whom do well. There's still opportunities, and they can't rest on their laurels, and they have to acknowledge that they're still not perfect. They still need to continue to get the pulse from their employees and their stakeholders, their internal stakeholders, as to whether or not they're addressing the right things instead of just what is, what they feel like it should be done.
As a follow-up question to that, I seem to remember not that long ago, a couple of years ago, Starbucks had an issue in Philadelphia, I think, with customers that weren't served properly, and they turned that around. So, you were with Starbucks for a while. Did you see them kind of embrace what happened and try to turn it into a positive experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was important there is that, yes, it was an incident that was less than favorable, and it wasn't okay. And Starbucks took a very aggressive public stance on being transparent about it as to where the vulnerabilities were, and kind of laying out a roadmap through some high accountability stakes measures to advance and continue to work. And, I think that the bigger thing is that if you make a mistake, it happens, because not everybody is perfect. It's what you do about it and really being vulnerable about it going forward.
Okay, Sean, I've waved my magic wand, and you're on the golf course on the first tee, and I'm going to give you can fill up your foursome. You got 3 people. They can be dead or alive. Who are you going to play golf with, and then have maybe a celebratory sandwich or libation or something on the 19th hole? Who would you want to spend your day golfing with, dead or alive?
Oh, I always have the hardest time with that question. I mean, I'm going to say Michael Jordan as one, and Tiger Woods, because I mean, the golf fanatics and just my athletic aptitude. And I just really appreciate their, I guess their competitiveness and their intensity around there. Filling up with the last one, I mean, that's tricky. I mean, I can also say, Martin Luther King, because he's just so iconic. And I mean, his just the leadership that he demonstrated, and the fortitude and the courage and the ability to engage and inspire is just awesome. It really is.
That's a good foursome. That is a great foursome. So while we're talking about inspiration, what's been the most impactful book that you've read? Is there a book that really has made a difference for you?
I think, How to Be an Anti-Racist is an important book, and especially in the DEI space. And a lot of it's focused just on, intentionally addressing racism. Has been really kind of it provides a lot of valuable pillars.
So I'm going to wave my magic wand again here, Sean. We're going to make you start a business. You probably heard this. We're asking all of our guests this. Has been a lot of fun. We're going to make you start a business based on a hobby. I'm not saying you have to be good at it or make a ton of money, but we want to know what hobby you'd say, I'm going to start a business from because I love this hobby.
I would like to do like an adventure travel business. Like really going into those places that are off the radar, that aren't your traditional travel destinations. And be it just my love of travel and being in the Navy and having lived in X number of states and countries and visited over 40 different countries, I really, that's a passion of mine, to be able to eat my way. At one point, I thought about writing a book, take a bite out of life, eat my way around the world, just because I love eating and I love all the different cultural foods. And there's really not much that I won't sample, at least. That is something that's really kind of is an engaging part of to be actively involved and be able to share those experiences with others.
Well, I think you should write it. I also know a pretty good editor who could help you out with that. So,
yeah, there we go. And Dan's got his own book out there. So yeah, and you should pick that one up because he uses golf as a metaphor and he does it very, very effectively.
It's a great one.
So tell us something that most people don't know about you.
Well, I mean, I'd say that, most people don't know that I'm, biracial. I'll throw that out there. It's whenever, that's kind of like the perspective that I have, my dad being Black, my mom being white. And a lot of people are kind of like yes, and who are you? What's your ethnicity? What do you represent? Which is relevant, but it's very important perspective to have. So, sharing that, with people, because I present more Caucasian, they're like, oftentimes they're like, oh, really? Oh, wow. Wonder what I just said around him.
Well, that I that's a great answer. It really is, Sean. And I guess that would lead to my next question, because you mentioned you have 3 boys, and they're biracial as well. And I've never met them. They may present more Caucasian, as you mentioned. What are some of the things that you're teaching your kids, and then what we can be teaching, our children and our grandchildren, those of us listening to this, as we try to continue to move forward on this journey?
Yeah, that's great. Because yes, by now my children present very Caucasian. They're now less than 25% African American. They have European, and they still have a lineage of Native American from my father's side. So what I try to teach them is just to respect the value of diversity, and diversity and cultural and experiences goes beyond skin deep, and that, prejudice can present itself in many different ways. My one son in high school experienced being bullied, if you will, by other ethnicities, and he was resentful of that. And he was called a Caucasian slang term that he came home and was just like, it's like, this is not, it's not processing. It's hard to unpack. So I just think that it's important for, as with everyone, to be able to teach and give exposure to different cultures and different socioeconomic levels, so that they understand what it may be like and why other people might be saying that they don't have, or acknowledging that they don't have the same opportunities as X individuals.
So to follow on to that, what should we do? Because you're right. I mean, someone meets you, I would not know that you were biracial. It shouldn't matter. But to some people it does. What are the things we should do to be more inclusive and to be more equitable? That's something that we could kind of leave our listeners with, to say, if you take nothing else from this, you should do one thing.
Learn to like more people. And that's outside of our normal comfort zone and our normal friend and social groups. And have these conversations with other friends. Expose yourself to different cultures and different festivals and different events. Take your kids on volunteer activities. Teach them what it means to volunteer at a soup kitchen, and how those clients there have a different experience in life and different opportunities, so they can at least see what this is all about.
And on that, which I think is a great way for us to finish here, I want to thank you so much for being a guest here on the Shrimp Tank. So Sean, for our listeners that want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more about you and what you do, where would they go? Well, right now I have an email presence. It's SeanGreenleeConsulting@gmail.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with you on LinkedIn. Okay, and while you're doing some connections, make sure you check out all the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle and wherever you get your podcasts. iHeart, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, because damn, we are ubiquitous. Ubiquitous. And check us out on our show's social media pages on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Well, first of all, Sean, thanks for being here. If you do get Jordan and Woods and you need a fourth, give me a call. Otherwise, let's still try to get out and hit the ball around. It was great doing that before. Thank you for your wisdom and knowledge on a very important topic. Linda, as always, thank you. Thanks for stepping in, pinch hitting at the last minute. We appreciate that. Everybody else, as Linda mentioned, we do this live stream every Wednesday at noon. So please join us for our next show on Wednesday, February 16th. Our guest will be Omar Saboni. Omar is from Spokane and has a company called Expense Reduction Services. Phil Simchich will be the co-host that week. We hope you join us. In the meantime, please be safe, be well, and be prosperous, and be kind, and get to like people. I love that Sean said that. Because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the